Good evening. Thank you. In light of this being the first full week of school for many of our students, thought I'd share this quote from United States Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. "You cannot dream of becoming something you do not know about. You have to learn to dream big. Education exposes you to what the world has to offer, to the possibilities open to you." And so in that vein, we wish our students, staff, teachers, and their families a happy, healthy, and safe school year and a world of possibilities. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Bowers.
Here.
Jones is absent. McGregor.
Here.
Padova.
Here.
Renner.
Here.
Schnetzer.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Thank you. Next section on the agenda, additions or corrections to the agenda. One correction to the agenda is there will be no proclamation presentation this evening. Are there any other additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to hearing of visitors. I have one speaker slip regarding the general hearing of visitors. The public hearing will take place following the hearing of visitors. As you know, you have 3 minutes after you approach this podium. Please state your name and address. And Mr. McClurg, please join us at the podium.
Hi, my name is Tim McClurg. My address is 935 Leaf Block Court in beautiful Gahanna, Ohio. First, I wanted to talk about what a wonderful job I think the city did, the city council, whoever else was involved in the whole Sheets thing. I mean, I know it got a ton of press all over the papers and all over the news and everything about Sheets being turned down twice. But I thought the location we have them going to now over there off the freeway is probably better than what they were going to be in downtown Gahanna. I think it's a better spot for them. So I just really wanted to amen that for everybody involved. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about that. The other thing is I'm really curious what our zoning is going to do with the coaches there. You know, it was a nice hangout that everybody liked to go to. Obviously, people would like to have it stay something nice to go to and not be, a Sheets or another gas station. I also want to recognize the city and city council or whoever was involved in creating these 2 committees that people can be a part of. One is the steering committee, where you can be a part of helping make decisions or helping weigh in on topics that are important to the city and finances and things like that. And the other one is to learn about Gahanna government. I think that's a pretty cool thing too. I, for one, don't know a whole lot about city government, how it works. I'm sure it's very similar to how it works in a business. You have hundreds of meetings that discuss something to death before you make a decision to move forward on it. I am not like that. I like to make decisions and move forward quickly. So it's a bit of a learning thing for me. The other things I'd like to talk about is I want a little bit more transparency on the 825 building. I was all for the move to the building. I thought it was a great thing. It's already a building, an office building. It was already using for offices, office space, which is kind of what City Hall is. I thought maybe the only thing we were going to be putting in there is maybe a bigger room for, city council meetings, to have more people in there. I didn't think we were going to tear the whole front off and the whole side off and the whole parking lot, of it. So I think there's some concern there as to why those things were done. I don't know if the parking lot was bad to begin with or, if it was a bad location for driving up there, because we were worried about somebody driving through the front of the building. But I just think there needs to be some transparency on that. If it's out there on the Gahanna website, then I've missed it. I'm probably looking in the wrong spot or something because I'm curious. And that was really it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClurg. I am sure that we will be in touch regarding your last question. I know that Senior Director Schultz has been very involved with putting together presentations regarding 825, so we'll be more than happy to make sure that you have all that information at your disposal. And thank you for for highlighting the citizen initiatives that are being spearheaded within City Hall. We appreciate your attention to that. Okay, next item on the agenda is our public hearing. Pursuant to council rules 9.10 and 9.11, I will give a brief statement or explanation of the item that we are having a hearing on tonight. Prior to opening the public hearing, the administration may make a presentation. I understand that Mr. Blackford is here, and if Mr. Blackford would like to continue forward with a presentation regarding this project, the public hearing will then be opened with an applicant or their representative to make a presentation or comment on the application of up to 10 minutes. Public comment will then be opened up for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Speakers this evening must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium when called to state your name and address for the record. Additional time, if needed, may be requested with permission at the discretion of Council President. If you have not yet completed a speaker slip, please feel free to do so and provide it to Deputy Clerk McGuire, who's to my right. With that, let me see. First, regarding a brief statement on what we are here on a public hearing on, is an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the City of Gahanna, adopted by Ordinance 0007-2024 on April 1, 2024, changing the zoning district of 2.58 acres of property located at 5061 Shagbark Road, parcel ID 027-000117, current zoning ER, formerly ER2, proposed zoning LR4, formerly LMFRD, HC Shagbark Real Estate LLC, Christopher Christoph applicant, and this is ordinance 47, 2024. Mr. Blackford.
Thank you very much. Michael Blackford, Department of Planning. No formal presentation tonight. The deep dive and the formal presentation was at the committee of whole back on July 15th, I believe it was. So just a refresher about the process and what we're here tonight. So tonight is a rezoning request, as you stated. And essentially the rezoning is really accomplishing two things. It's changing the zoning of the property for a specific use. In this case, the zoning, the L-R4, allows for one particular use, that is multifamily development. So in this case, if you approve the rezoning, you're saying that multifamily is an appropriate use on this property. And since there's a limited overlay text, that limited overlay specifically limits density to 14 units. So about 5.5 units per acre. That is a self-imposed restriction. That is less than what the zoning code would allow by right. So that is essentially what we're here tonight. If the rezoning is successful, only if it is successful, then there's additional processes and permitting that's required. Some of those are within the administrative review, and some of those are public hearing items. So public hearing items, if this is approved, there would be a development plan application that would have to go before Planning Commission. That is a public hearing, very similar notification process as the rezoning. That particular application, the elements that Planning Commission reviews, that is site layout, building design, buffering, landscaping, things of that nature. The administrative review on the engineering side of the process, that is elements like traffic, easements, utilities, drainage, things of that nature. So tonight, it's about the appropriateness of rezoning to multifamily and having the limitation on 14 units. With that, I have no additional information. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Blackford.
And I'll be available for questions, of course.
Okay, thank you. Before I open the public, well, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. All right. I have Mr. Cull here on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Cull, you'll have 10 minutes to provide a presentation. If you'd like to reserve some time for that, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, President.
If possible, I'd like to just reserve my time for the end to answer any questions. We've been through the presentation a number of times, so I can answer any questions now or just wait until the end, until the rest of the public speakers.
Well, I think if you'd like to reserve your 10 minutes till the end, we can do that and have the rebuttal, or I guess the opponents speak their 3 minutes first.
Thank you.
Okay. Any objection from my colleagues? Okay. All right, with that, I will turn then to the members of the public. We have 4 speaker slips. Let me ask, because I believe that you are all residents of, I believe you're all residents of the Shagbark condominiums. Do you have a preferred order in which I call you up? All right. Mr. Phelps, if you would please come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address, and I will put the timer up for you.
Michael Phelps, 1186 Sanctuary Place, Woods at Shagbark. I only have just a couple things to bring up. Number one, I'm not against developing this property at all. I just want to make sure this is a cohesive, beneficial development. Woods at Shagbark is just a tick over 21 acres. We have 21 acres. We are insured at $40 million. So I got to believe that puts us up in the top 5%, 10% of Gahanna, residential land values. I would hate to see something happen here that would be a detriment to those property values and the tax income that comes from those. My next concern with this zoning is that you're dealing with our private roadway that we own. We haven't heard from these guys once. They're also attempting to use an easement that was created through the Valvoline. However, that easement will be void by this rezoning for their proposal because it's predicated on the fact that the easement was granted for no more than 6 single-family homes or 6 condominiums or 6 townhomes, and they're looking at 14 units. So that would void the easement, and they're back at square one with Valvoline to try to figure that out. Our road's a left in, or a right in, right out on Hamilton Road. There's no left turn coming out of there. So it's a tight figure for traffic. The last thing that I have is really, there's a small, for want of a better word, wetlands area at the northwest corner of this parcel that drains across our roadway to the neighboring property to the north of our road. However, drain is maybe not the right word. There's an equalizer pipe that runs across, and on the north side of our roadway is maybe a 4-foot diameter detention hole that during a rain allows it to kind of hold water and then dissipate. That's going to have to be rectified before we add a bunch more impervious surface area on this property, pushing water across our roadway to our neighbor to the north there. That's really all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker, would George Mruss like to speak next?
George Mruss, 1217 Sanctuary Place, of course, Woods at Shagbark. My wife Eileen and I have lived at 1217 Sanctuary Place for almost 18 and a half years. I'd like to thank council for the time and opportunity to address and state my qualified support for the proposed residential development at 5061 Shagbark. A few facts about the Woods at Shagbark. We're a 118-unit community. As Mike mentioned, we have basically a back-of-the-envelope real estate value of close to $40 million, which makes us one of the highest valued residential real estate parcels in the city of Gahanna. Again, back of the envelope, we directly contribute $1 million of property taxes, of which everybody knows 60% goes to our schools. if we have maybe 10 or 12 students in the woods of Shagbark, there's a net positive of probably close to 25 students that our community supports. We can't lose fact of the value that we have created at the woods of Shagbark over the years, and with this new development, we hope that the value is similar in nature. 4 points for council to consider if you lived at the woods of Shagbark. The proposed development currently, based on renderings, has but one right ingress, Shagbark Road, and one right egress, Hamilton Road, above and beyond the limitations set forth in the easement timestamped by the county auditor on May 24, 2021. How will the developer address this issue? 2, construction vehicles and equipment for the proposed development will compromise the structural integrity and the curb appeal of the Shagbark Road entrance, which is in essence the primary entrance into our community. How will the developer address this issue? Traffic flow issues for construction and other related vehicles. And mind you, it's a bus stop in the morning and the afternoon for the 10 or 12 students that live in the woods of Shagbark. Will negatively impact the quality of life for many residents at the woods of Shagbark and the value of our community in aggregate. How will the developer address this issue? Will there be limitations on the hours and day parts of construction and the use of equipment? Monday through Friday, 7 to 5 p.m. only, no Saturday or Sunday. And lastly, the demand for housing in Central Ohio, and Gahanna in particular, is undeniable. The proposed development provides an opportunity to add to that supply. However, I would ask that council respectfully ask the developer to specifically address and provide clarification and resolution to the issues mentioned by myself, as well as other unit owners, prior to council moving forward with this issue. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to council on this issue this evening. Bingo, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. All right. Mrs. Jane Miller? If you'd please state your name and address, and I'll start the timer.
My name's Jane Miller. I live at 1198 Sanctuary Place in the woods of Shagbark. My husband, Bill Miller, and I have lived there for over 19 and a half years. He will be speaking to you after me. He's a retired architect. I'm a retired attorney. I have over 25 years of legal practice in regulatory administrative law fields, including specialties in environmental law, being a staff attorney at the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, the attorney on duty for the emergency response spill team of OEPA, like you saw on TV during the Norfolk Southern train massive derailment and air and water pollution problem in northeastern Ohio. Attorney General's office, representing the Public Utilities Commission, handled 7 appeals to the Ohio Supreme Court and worked for the Public Utilities Commission as a section chief. After that, I taught for 5 years at Ohio University on state and federal regulatory matters. What I want to talk about tonight is primarily the limited overlay district that this applicant has requested. This was not something that was foisted upon them, although they only asked for it as late as May 6, 2024, after the zoning changes. This is a limited overlay district, so I'm going to highlight certain things to keep in mind in approving this. As our other Shagbark speakers are saying tonight, we are not opposed to this development or a multifamily development. It needs to be done properly and legally so as to protect other people's interests, the environment, and everybody's health and safety. In fact, when you approve a limited overlay district, which is the key thing to be considered tonight, is you need to go to the code section, 1103.19, limited overlay district. And under small letter F as in Frank, development standards, it says the limited overlay standards shall comply with, and I'm going to read you the 3 pertinent things. Fair, it needs to be fair, protecting the legal rights for those affected. The woods of Shagbark is affected, as you've already heard and you'll continue to hear. Understandable for those in the marketplace, and simple for effective interpretation and enforcement by the city. I have reviewed this matter over the last 2 or 3 months. I have watched the video of the Planning Commission meeting. I prepared materials for that. My husband presented them. He's going to represent them to you tonight and give you the same packet that the Planning Committee received so you can follow along with his discussion, and we are very concerned about this. In addition to what he is going to talk about, I am equally concerned, given my EPA and utility background, with things that some of the city council members have talked about, because I read your minutes from the last meeting in July. Stormwater management under your ordinance 1113.02, and erosion sediment control under 1113.03. Can I ask for a couple little additional minutes?
Is 2 additional minutes acceptable? Okay. All right. 2 additional minutes?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As many of you probably already know that may have been on council even before, or involved with this community even before we moved here in '05, the city paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a detention basin. It would be east of Giant Eagle and west of part of our development in the woods of Shagbark to try to deal with the stormwater flooding and erosion. Hickory Run is the creek that runs along our boundary, and it runs along the southern boundary of the site in question you're looking at tonight. And there were heavy equipment and trucks there for months dealing with that, which was a horrible dust problem, noise, and et cetera, just like what George referenced about if this is going to be developed, how are these construction trucks even going to get in and out of the site? We don't know that yet, because the ingress and egress is not clear at all with what currently exists. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, also because of my environmental response background and water and air pollution, like the Norfolk Southern site, you can have horrendous emergencies. If they cannot get fire trucks into this small, you're going to hear about it from my husband, the size of it, that's actually usable, site to put out fires and to deal with other potential types of emergencies, our development can be put at risk, as well as the Firestone and Valvoline businesses that sit on the other side of this proposed development along Hamilton Road. Those are both automotive businesses dealing with automotive fluids that are either flammable, combustible, or potentially explosive. And that's what I used to deal with emergency response things. There's at least 8 fluids in those buildings on site that if the heat temperature builds up can flash over and act like a bomb, like a fire bomb. This traffic situation needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. All right, and Mr. Miller. If you'd please state your name and address.
I'm Bill Miller at 1198 Sanctuary Place in Gahanna, in Woods Shagbark, and I'm a retired architect with over 50 years' experience, and mostly in planning and design. You should have this packet, and I'm not going to go over the whole packet, but it's for you to purview, including our proposed zoning overlay restrictions, since this is a zoning overlay. It's an overlay type zone. But I do want to call your attention to a couple of these. If you'll turn to Exhibit C here, you'll see the easily buildable area on the site is 0.9 acres. And the pink part of this is a steep slope. It's at one point it's 36%, and it's a drop of 20 feet between the flat site and the stream. Now please turn to Exhibit E. This shows the proposed building site locations along with the access and egress. Please notice that the access from the Valvoline site runs right into one of their proposed buildings. Also notice that one of the buildings is located on the steepest part of the slope, 20 feet, and that could be a problem. If they build there, they're going to have to build up that area from the lowest floor by a considerable amount of retaining wall. And so we think that's a problem. Now, because of this is an environmentally sensitive and difficult site, we recommend delaying the zoning approval until the following documents have been submitted and reviewed by the Planning Commission staff and approved by the Planning Commission. A written and definitive description of how the site access and circulation works to provide adequate access to Hamilton Road, with a copy of any recorded easement changes and a written sign-off by all parties, including property owners and representatives of Valvoline, because there's a problem with the access, especially on southbound Hamilton. It has to be two-way through the Valvoline in order for that to work. And the second part we want is a revised conceptual site plan detailing proposed locations of buildings based on actual site conditions, grades, access points, and other applicable conditions. This was obviously laid out without any thought to that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right. Are there any other opponents or non-applicants who wish to speak on this tonight? Excuse me, thank you. All right, with that then, Mr. Cull has reserved his 10 minutes to address concerns raised, and so I will reset our timer. Please state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes to provide comment.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Cull, C-U-L-L. Address is 207 North 4th Street, Columbus, 43214. So, while listening to the various residents that live close by within Shagbark, it's not that I could address line item in detail what's being asked for. It's just that this is not, for most of it, the appropriate venue to go over that. The applicant will spend tens of thousands, if not more, on engineering, stormwater, drainage, all that happens, but we don't pull the trigger on that until we know we at least have the zoning, and that's, again, Mr. Blackford mentioned it before, it's been mentioned in other meetings, but that's what we're here for tonight. With regard to the zoning, at least from our point of view, what is being asked for is both very reasonable, it fits with the environment, and it has much less impact than what the current zoning calls for. The exact layout of the 14 units is going to adjust once they dig into the engineering, stormwater, all that will adjust slightly, but will still be within the parameters of what's being requested here. And while I said I wouldn't, now's not the time to get into the details of what has been addressed, I would like to point out that what has been stated as far as the access and lack of easements, those were not accurate statements. We do have 2 vehicle access easements, one on Shagbark and one through the Valvoline, and we are in the process. They are negotiating a revised easement through the Valvoline property, which was addressed at the meeting of the whole as well. We would ask that rather than getting into the details of what will be addressed through the next phases, if we are approved in zoning, that we be allowed to move forward with that. We have the list of what the Condominium Association provided at the last hearing, the list of their requests. We are weighing those in for the application for a final development plan, and have our word that what we can do, we will do to be good neighbors. And with that, I would open for any questions from council.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Call. Let me pause this. So this is a bit of a different process than what you experienced in Planning Commission, where there was presentation, comment from the public, and then discussion immediately on that item from Planning Commission members. This evening, we have this item is on the agenda in two locations. One, in the location of the public hearing, which is where we are right now. And then later on, in section H of the agenda, we have the ordinance for second reading and adoption. During that section, during second reading and adoption, is when council members would discuss and vote on that item. We have a very short agenda tonight, so we will get through. I considered advancing that, but I think just for sake of maintaining the agenda the way it is, we're going to proceed through. It will conclude public hearing on this item. We'll proceed through consent agenda, 2 ordinances for introduction and first reading, and then immediately into section H on the agenda so that we can continue to discuss this item and open the floor to questions and dialogue from council. So thank you all for bearing with us. If there are no further comments on this item for public hearing at this time, I will close public hearing and we will move on to the next section of the agenda. All right. With that, we'll move on to section F, consent agenda. We have 2 items on this evening's consent agenda, minutes and a resolution, Resolution 0031-2024, a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply for alternative funding through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, attributable funds for the Big Walnut Trail, Section 8. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved, Madam President.
I have a first by Mr. Schnetzer.
Second.
A second by Mr. Weaver. Any discussion? All right. Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Schnetzer,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Padova,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes. All right, motion carries and the consent agenda is adopted. Next section on the agenda is section G, ordinances for introduction and first reading. Ordinance 0049-2024, an ordinance to amend the City of Gahanna 2023 to 2027 capital improvement plan as adopted by ordinance 0060-2023 and subsequently amended by ordinance 0024-2024. The second item for introduction and first reading is ordinance 0051-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a purchase agreement with Value Recovery Group 2, LLC, for property located adjacent to 825 Tech Center Drive and declaring an emergency. Now we are on to section H of the agenda, ordinances for second reading and adoption. The ordinance on for second reading this evening is ordinance 0047-2024, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the City of Gahanna adopted by ordinance 007-2024 on April 1, 2024, changing the zoning district of 2.58 plus or minus acres of property located at 5061 Shagbark Road, parcel ID 027-000117, current zoning ER, formerly ER2, proposed zoning LR4, formerly LMFRD, HC Shagbark Real Estate LLC, Christopher Christoph applicant. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 0047-2024?
So moved, Madam President.
I have a first by Mr. Weaver. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Padova. All right, for discussion, I'd like to go in order. I'm sure all of us maybe have questions and discussion. Mr. Renner, would you like to lead us off?
Thank you, President Bowers. So my question right now, well, first off, a comment. Really enjoy looking at, this is a zoning application, and typically we look at zoning devoid of a project. I understand that this is a zoning maybe for a particular project. I enjoy that there's single-family homes. There's a proposal on my side of town that is not single-family homes, whereas people can actually buy and own it, but that's another discussion. My question tonight is actually Director Blackford. the proposed zoning that we discussed, several of us talked about being sensitive to the ravine, to the slope. And in the proposed, zoning that Mr. Miller has provided us, I was trying to actually look at other documents. But help me remember our conversation about this. There's the 0.9 acres of basically flat area, right? And does the proposed zoning that the legislation that we're going to vote on, does it restrict in any way building on that slope into the ravine?
No, no, it does not, because that's a construction-related issue, and we're not at that phase yet. It would be atypical to have that level of detail at this phase.
That was going to be my next question. So it's not a normal thing in zoning language that we would impose that type of restriction?
Correct. So if there was something, with environmental related areas with additional setbacks, that should be in some code somewhere. On our various codes, we don't have anything related to that. So that's why it would be an inappropriate topic to include into a zoning overlay, because it's not something that's regulated by zoning.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's really the only question that I had on this, because the zoning as is, I'm fine with, but I'm very sensitive to that.
Project. And
Yes. And so that's our colleagues in planning.
Well, even that to a certain extent is outside of planning commission. So there would be a more refined site plan, obviously, as part of the planning commission if approval process, if the rezoning is successful. So that will be looked at in some regards, but as far as, what can be permitted as far as land clearing and leveling, that is outside of planning and planning commission's roles and responsibilities.
All right, thank you. President Bowers, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Mr. Weaver?
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up, and I don't want to jump in front of Mr. Schnetzer here, but I thought it might be helpful for, don't run too far, Director, please. I thought it might be helpful for teeing up process. I know in regards to rezoning requests, there are only certain factors we consider, but also what is appropriate for us to consider here at this stage versus what would be considered further down the line, whether at Planning Commission or further in the process, just to help set the stage, so to speak, because I know my questions will be geared in that sense, and just to help try to keep the conversation on track for us.
Great question, appreciate it. So as you stated, there are varying approval criteria with the various processes. So with a rezoning, there's 6 different criterion to consider. Consistency with the goals of the land use plan. I think we talked about that a little bit at our committee of the whole. Physical compatibility of the property with the allowed uses, something that we were just speaking about. Availability of sites elsewhere already zoned for the proposed use. So, again, multifamily uses are allowed in our Creekside area and in a multifamily zoning. Very limited properties that are available of any size and ability to be redeveloped. Compatibility of all potential uses allowed in the proposed zoning. In this particular case, it's a very limiting zoning category. Usually I'm before you with a commercial rezoning that's a little bit more nebulous because there's a lot more uses that are allowed. In this case, it's really just multifamily. Capacity of infrastructure, and then apparent demand for permitted uses. And from anecdotal, I don't have the exact data, but from the phone calls, meeting requests that me and my team receive, multifamily probably outweighs all the other requests combined. So that's the criteria for a rezoning request.
Thank you, Director.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Schnetzer?
Thank you, Madam President. And Mr. Weaver, thank you for kind of the, setting the table there with regard to process and what we are actually evaluating at the council level. I recognize that we are not approving a project. While it may appear that way because the city's process requires that essentially the owner/developer initiate the rezoning request. The city does not initiate the rezoning request. Usually they have a project in mind, but I want to be very clear, we're not approving a project, at least at this level. We're also not approving design, we're not approving color, we're not approving materials, layout, or anything of the sort. We're simply approving or not approving a rezoning request. But I think we are evaluating what should be permitted. And based on the discussions to date, as well as what I've heard here today, I think at a very high level, I would think most would agree that the requested zoning is consistent with some of the other development that is in the area. It's consistent with the land use plan. It is certainly consistent with the development to the east, the woods of Shadbark. And I think we've even talked about why other zoning types would not be realistic, such as commercial development, because there's no frontage. I think, Mr. Blackford, you had brought that up at one of the meetings when this was introduced. But there is a piece of information that I guess that I heard that I feel is somewhat new today, and that's a discussion about the easement at Valvoline. Now, forgive me, I've gone back, I've watched some of the Planning Commission videos, and I've sat here and I've heard some of the discussions. I know that easement was at least mentioned in some of those prior discussions, and I'm just wondering if the administration can comment on what we heard tonight, which is that that easement would be in some way restricted if this project were to go forward in its, I guess, requested allowable use. I think I heard something to the effect of the easement would allow 6 single-family homes. What's being requested is 14, and that would terminate the easement. I just want a little bit more clarification on that.
Matthew Call, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So that easement was granted, and I can pull it up here, but several years ago, and it was part of the property owner with the lease to Valvoline. They have a long-term lease on that. So at present, it does limit it to 6 single-family homes. They've been negotiating for longer than I would like to admit on the increase. And clearly, while it's not necessarily a city issue, we couldn't develop 14 single-family homes on the property without risking a lawsuit unless we have that easement changed. And it's everything but signed, as I understand it. So I have seen the updated copies. It's just a matter of getting signature on it. Right now, the easement is two-way, private easement. So the discussions are for 14 units, is it going to be limited to one way? And that's where the current discussions are.
So I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, that the easement, it's critical to the project as being proposed, meaning if you want to build 14 units, you've got to have the easement.
If we want to build 14 units, we have to have the provision in the current easement amended and revised or replaced to allow 14.
I guess
So
maybe I'll rephrase the question. If you don't have an easement, let's say it doesn't exist, there is no easement, this project in your mind is not viable. Is that correct?
I think is it still viable? Yes. Is it as marketable to the residents of the 14 units? Probably not as marketable if it's going to be that much more difficult. Again, if you're limited to one access point. So critical? Yeah, I'd say it's pretty critical, but we're also confident that it's there. It's the negotiations are over the minutia, not that it's going to be granted.
I guess my question is to the administration. Has that been a part of your discussions, either with the applicant or with Planning Commission, kind of where this
So-
revised easement lies, you know?
So it
within-
sounds like we're talking about the easement for Valvoline and that. And like stated, it was discussed at various levels. And I think with Planning Commission, they said, well, if it's approved, when we see the project, we're going to be interested in seeing the dynamics of that, whether it's one way in, one way out. Again, that's something that's, a related topic, but a future one, in that, there has to be access to a piece of property. It can't be landlocked. And there is access to the north. So I think it's not a code requirement to have 2 access points for a project of this size. So if the rezoning was approved, it could move forward with only 1 access point. Planning Commission could, in their deliberations, take that into account and restrict things as they see appropriate, though.
And I trust they would. I think you indirectly answered sort of my next follow-on question would be, if it somehow falls apart, where does that get rectified? And it sounds like that gets rectified at the planning commission level, is that correct?
Yes, because this is a related issue as part of the public hearing. Related meaning that it's not a code requirement, but it's under the Planning Commission purview, so they have that ability to approve with conditions and modifications. So access location and limiting something because of changing of access, that could be something under their purview, yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Schnetzer. Mrs. McGregor?
While I agree that this is, multifamily is appropriate zoning for this, I do have concerns with a building sitting on a part of land that has the drop-off that this one building has. We did not see a topographical map before, and my question would be, where is the floodway and where's the floodplain on this map? That's a concern as far as development. And then I would like to restate that when we had the discussion before, we talked about the sewer that was, when the properties in the front were developed, the prior owner, maybe it's still the owner, would not allow access to bring the sewer from Shagbark through their property. And so I just want to make sure that this developer will complete that sewer so that we can eliminate a lift station, and that sewer will be completed, because a sewer system without a lift station is always preferable to a system that has, I just said that wrong. A sewer system that is gravity-based is always better than a sewer system that relies on a lift station, which can require maintenance and breakdown. And last time, they said that that would be done. I just want to restate that issue, that will be done for this property. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, I have that in my notes that Mr. Christoph had agreed to that, and I've voiced any opposition to that.
Okay.
Being an attorney, I'd always like to reserve some, back out in the case of impossibility, or, I'm not an engineer, so whatever reservation I need to not be sued for malpractice on that promise, I'd ask that be reserved for the record, because there's always stuff that comes up that makes it an impossibility. Is that fair enough?
Okay, well, all right.
I mean, I'm not aware of any reason why that, the promise to allow that to be completed wouldn't be fulfilled. But the devil's in the details when you start to get into engineering and work through. So that's on our list.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Is that fair enough?
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Anything else, Mrs. McGregor?
No, I don't think so.
All right, Ms. Padova?
Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening and voicing your concerns. Mr. Blackford, you said that 2 entry points are not required for this project. So, and one entry point would be okay. I'm assuming that entry point you're talking about is Shagbark Road?
I think so, just in the context of the conversation with the uncertainty or the unsigned easement with Valvoline, if worst case scenario that doesn't go through, that the Valvoline easement to this property, that connection, vehicular connection wasn't required by code or any specific reason. I think that was a private deal in that. And so if that fell through, the access point onto Shagbark would meet code requirements in that. And so the project could move forward, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cole, we heard residents say that road is a private road that hasn't been, to their knowledge, granted permission. Do you know if that permission has been granted?
Yes, as part of our application process, we produced an embarrassing number of easements going back, I think, 40 or 50 years when all these parcels were developed. I wish there was one single declaration of easement that clearly sets forth and showed a nice little picture. Unfortunately, there's about 15 easements that, any group of 5 or 6 of them taken together meets and bounds shows the easement on Shagbark. It's clear after you spend a good amount of time looking through it, but we submitted those to the city and went through them with traffic. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's my only question.
Thank you, Ms. Padova. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam President. First, thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening and speaking. Appreciate your time and consideration. Couple questions before I sort of restrict my comments to those factors that Director Blackford mentioned. In terms of should a rezoning request be approved this evening, what is next in the process, and what are the opportunities for public input moving forward?
So if the rezoning is successful, then typically the next step the applicant would take would be to file the additional planning department applications. In this case, it would be a development plan that would be filed. A development plan of this nature is not an administratively approvable application. It is a public hearing application before Planning Commission. So after that completes the staff review process, when that's ready for hearing, that's when it gets scheduled for hearing, and then the advertisements go out. Planning Commission has a similar public participation as the rezoning and as we had here tonight. So that would be the next public hearing opportunity for involvement in the application or in the development.
Thank you, Director. And when in that process would ingress and egress on various roadways be discussed and maybe finalized, what that would actually look like?
Yeah, so as was just stated by the applicant, that a lot of the heavy lifting was done as part of the rezoning and going through the easements, providing that to the appropriate staff to review that request. I would suspect that as part of the Planning Commission review, the engineering department's probably going to want to see the easement with Valvoline and see that agreement. The Planning Commission applications, they'll show access. I mean, they're not down to the survey accurate, but it's a very close location as to where those are going to be. If it gets approved and they want to get rid of an access point or something of that nature, that would be inconsistent with the approval, and they'd have to go back and change their development plan, go back through the approval process through Planning Commission.
Thank you. And trying to put this particular project off to the side and just say, understand to Mr. Schnetzer's point, the city's process is the applicant initiates the rezoning request. The city doesn't do that itself. So taking putting the consideration of this current applicant aside, should the rezoning be approved, that rezoning would be the current zoning code in place for this parcel for whether this applicant decides to move forward or if this applicant decides to pack their bags and somebody else comes along.
Correct. Absolutely correct. So this runs with the land. It's not specific to just this one individual. Now, if there were changes to the site plan or changes to the uses, something substantial, they might have to go back through the rezoning process and make some modifications.
Sure. So, thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification because I do think it's important to bear in mind for my colleagues, for the general public. I think based on those factors that we discussed earlier, I know that there is a call in part of the land use plan for commercial development along that area. I disagree that commercial would be the most appropriate use for this location. I think that is multifamily residential. One of the other factors mentions the demand there for, we have that demand for multifamily residential. We're not seeing that demand as much for commercial. And then certainly there's a need for a variety of housing stock in the city with limited availability elsewhere in the city. So I think on the whole, regardless of the applicant, again, I think it is most appropriate to move this parcel towards a multifamily residential zoning. So, thank you. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. I believe that the majority of my questions have been answered. Mr. Cull, if you're willing and if you have this information, just for sake of moving the needle forward on some resident questions, there were a few things that came out at the Planning Commission meeting in June and then again as well tonight. And I know that this is not relevant to the question presented to us now, but I'm wondering if it's something that you can assist us with. Is there a general price point that you're aware of related to these units yet? And what's the proposed square footage of each unit?
So if I could answer your latter question first, estimated square footage is around 2,100 square foot per unit. As far as the price point, developers hate giving that and then being tied to it. What I can tell you is the last time I spoke to Mr. Christoph about that and looking at the units in the, the existing condominium units, around that, the price point would be higher than the average price point of those condominiums currently, as they're selling now. So we're not looking at low end for 14 units with all the engineering, the build out. If anyone's been part of any kind of a home construction project in the last 2 or 3 years, these are going to be pretty well priced. I mean, they're not going to lower the property values of the condominium association behind them. So that I could pretty much guarantee. But as far as an exact dollar amount, it's been several months since I've even talked to Mr. Christoph about that. But there'll be, does that get close to what?
Yeah, I think that's sufficient. And has there been discussion, would there be an HOA associated with this community?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I actually do have a question maybe for Director Blackford. As the parcel is proposed in the future land use plan to be zoned commercial or suburban office, has there been any sort of calculation of what type of parking or building size would fit on this parcel given its limitations due to its topography?
So that level of analysis wouldn't have been done at the land use plan stage. It's more broad brush, but you bring up some factors that would additional factors that would probably limit the viability of that site being zoned and developed commercially. With the topography changes, and commercial setbacks and commercial buffering standards adjacent to residential are greater than multifamily next to multifamily, so that starts eating into that development footprint. If the exhibit showed, around an acre of flat developable land, the front yard setbacks and setbacks to the east along next to Shagbark are going to cut into that development footprint. So it gets to be fairly challenging. And then office typically has a higher parking ratio than some other types of uses. It's going to be a fairly small building that could probably fit on there and meet code just because of that limited development footprint. I don't know what that number would be, but if it was 0.9 acres, that might be around 10,000 square feet, but that would be maybe like 30 parking spaces, and I think that'd be a little much on that site, meeting those setbacks. So I think it'd be less than like a 10,000 square foot building, considerably less probably.
And thank you. Are there any height restrictions to the multifamily, the LR4, either in the LR4 designation or in the limited overlay?
Yeah, so in this case, it's limited to 2 stories by right, and I believe they said by conditional use, they could come back and ask for additional height. If it was zoned commercial, it's a little bit difficult because we're dealing with 2 different codes and different, but commercial typically has a higher, maximum height than a residential zoning. So it could go a little bit higher in a commercial category. I don't know exactly what that is, but in this particular case, the limited overlay, again, is 2 stories by right, a conditional use, which is a public hearing. It's not an administrative decision if they wanted to go higher.
Okay, thank you, Director. Just finally, I want to thank everyone who's here tonight, and particularly the Millers and Mr. Phelps and Mr. Russ. I can tell you've put a lot of time and energy into considering this project and really fine-tuning your comments to help guide to a better project and a better outcome for our entire community. So I want to commend you and everyone here tonight. You really, again, show what's best about Gahanna, which is looking for solutions. And I'm incredibly proud to serve you because I know how solution-oriented all of you are. Mr. Cull, it's very similar to a project last year that was a multifamily project on Morse Road. In that scenario, we had residents that were absolutely open to working with the developer and thinking through some of these resident concerns to make a really strong partnership to abut a higher density multifamily project to a condo development. And so I think that's a testament to the type of community that we are and really a community of people that understands competing interests, that understands landowner rights, understands the need for housing, but also wants to maintain a great quality of life while protecting our environment and various other factors. So again, I commend all of you. Thank you so much for making this an incredibly pleasant experience. Not every city council gets to do rezoning hearings in such an amicable and productive way. So I, again, am very, very proud to be here on your behalf tonight. Are there any other discussion from my colleagues? Any final questions? All right. With that, Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Weaver.
Yes.
Padova.
Yes.
McGregor.
Yes.
Renner.
Yes.
Schnetzer.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes. All right, motion carries and ordinance 47-2024 is adopted. With this, we turn it back to the Planning Department and Planning Commission's very capable hands to bring us home to a final product. So thank you all. Our next item on tonight's agenda is Section I, ordinances for second reading and emergency adoption. Ordinance 48-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, SOPEC, the execution and delivery of the agreement establishing SOPEC, and approving the bylaws of SOPEC and declaring an emergency. Is there a first to adopt this ordinance? Thank you, Mr. Renner. I know we are very excited about moving forward with this project. Is there a second on ordinance 48? A second from Mr. Weaver. Any discussion on this item?
Are you sure, Steve? Are you sure?
Mr. Renner.
Thank you, President. Today marks an important milestone for our community as we approach the final vote on the legislation for electrical aggregation. This journey began about a year ago in the fall of 2023, as it's been a lengthy, thoughtful process. We have dedicated significant time and energy to carefully consider the important merits and issues surrounding this proposal. This simple question was, how do we help provide opportunities to all our residents to lower greenhouse gas emissions and save on electrical bills? Yet we knew we needed help in this arena. In February, I introduced Joe Florida, CEO of Power Clean Fuels Ohio, to Gahanna to help us with our work on this. Soon after, in March of this year, we hired PCFO for their expertise and agreed to an aspirational goal of 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. By June, Joe and his team worked with the mayor's staff and came up with a recommended path to find an appropriate partner for electrical aggregation. Electrical aggregation has the potential to offer our residents greater control over their energy choices with the promise of more competitive rates and access to 100% renewable energy sources. However, we also recognize the need to concerns such as ensuring transparency, maintaining reliability, and providing options for those who may choose to opt out. Throughout this process, we have engaged with experts, listened to the voices of our community, and weighed the benefits and challenges. The decision we make today is the result of months of deliberation and commitment to what we believe in the best interest of Gahanna. Lost my place. SOPEC has a great track record in serving a variety of communities with affordable clean energy and have considerable success at pursuing federal grant dollars on behalf of their communities. As we cast our final vote, let us remember that this legislation is not just about energy, but it's about empowering our residents, fostering sustainability, and making choices that reflect our values as a community. I sincerely thank Joe Florida of PCFO, the mayor and her staff, specifically Kevin Schultz and Corey Weibensinger, for all their time and effort and patience with me to get here to this legislation. I would also like to thank Christy Meyer of Upriver Consulting and all the residents that have voiced their opinion and needs. Finally, I would like to thank all my colleagues on council for their thoughtful questions and courage to step forward on this. And last but not least, I would like to thank our President, Marissa Bowers, for her help in shepherding this through with her leadership position. Thank you. For the record, if it's not clear yet, I will be voting yes on this contract and look forward to our advice from our SOPEC colleagues, both on the markets, and we need some, and when we should start the process of public meetings and actual aggregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Mrs. McGregor.
I just made one comment. If this aggregation was for the lowest price regardless of source, I would vote yes, but if it's only clean energy, then I cannot support this.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Any other comments tonight? I'll just, again, reflect and appreciate Mr. Renner's comments. I think he's covered it very well tonight. I'm incredibly grateful to the administration for your work on this, Mr. Wyman-Singer, Mr. Schultz in particular. We really appreciate what you've done, and I look forward to offering. Mr. Schultz, you have some comments tonight. All right.
Just one clarification to Ms. McGregor's comment. I think it's important.
Yes.
There is an opt-out. There is an opt-out position with SOPEC in order to back down to a non-renewable source of energy. That would require the participant to actually call the 1-800 number and make that request specifically. So you are opted into the 100% renewable, and then you have a back out if you so choose to take that, but you're calling SOPEC and/or AEP Energy to ask to be put back into the brown energy pool, if you would.
So you would still be within the aggregation, but within?
Correct.
Okay, all right, I didn't know that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All right, if there's no, yes, I'm sorry.
Nope, thank you, Madam President. I'll be very brief. I think Mr. Renner did a far better job than I could at sharing his enthusiasm for moving forward with this. I'm also very excited to see this process moving forward. As folks know, we've received several presentations on the item over the past year, lots of healthy discussion. I've shared with some staff members privately, but want to state publicly my gratitude to them, particularly Directors Wyman-Singer and Schultz, but all of the administration. I know this has been a huge lift for them, and so thank you very much. And I also want to express my gratitude to Mr. Renner for his leadership on this issue. I think our community will be all the better for it. So this particular resolution allows us to become members of SOPEC, which does come with many benefits. Apart from broadly assisting us with our decision to move forward with community choice aggregation, but some of the other benefits also include advocacy efforts on our behalf at the local, regional, and state level. There's ongoing educational opportunities throughout the year, including regarding energy utility services, management and policy, access to discounted energy efficiency products for the community, as well as, of course, connections and the dreaded N-word of networking with other community leaders for help, support, and camaraderie in this, and of course, access to programming and planning services that have certainly a long-term value as well. So all that said, I'm very excited to move this forward and to echo Mr. Renner's comments. In case it's not clear, I plan to support the item.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Ms. Padova.
Thank you. I want to echo everyone else's thanks to the administration and everyone who has gotten us to this point to move forward, and definitely to Mr. Renner's passion here in helping us move forward on this. And I want to echo something that President Bowers brought up months ago now, I can't remember how long since we've been working on this, about the cost of continuing with brown energy. I know that there have been comments of, similar to Mrs. McGregor's this evening, about just using the cheapest option. And since looking into all of this, I did hear a podcast that specifically was talking about the insurance industry and how these huge, natural disasters are really chipping away at the insurance industry. I want to say that it was 14 of the 50 states are now, insurance companies are not receiving the amount that they are putting out there in claims. When you drive down pretty much any road in Gahanna right now, you're seeing a new roof. And most of those, I would imagine, are free roofs due to the storms that we've had this year. But that is not, I don't think, the norm. So yes, there may be a cheaper option right now, something that looks cheaper. But many of us will pay for it down the road if we continue going in the trajectory that we are going. So I very much support moving forward with this, and also moving forward with green energy. And I would encourage everyone to really look into that a little bit further. Thank you.
Ms. Padova. Any further discussion on this item tonight? All right, we've had a lot of conversation over the preceding 7 or so months on this, so I'm glad to take this next step forward. Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Renner,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Padova,
Yes.
Schnetzer,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGregor.
Yes.
Motion carries. Ordinance 48-2024 is adopted. Next section on the agenda is Section J, ordinances for introduction, waiver, and adoption. So for first reading tonight, we have ordinance 50-2024, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations and waiving second reading, Workers' Compensation Fund, 9,000, contract services. Senior Director Volmer presented this to us last week at Committee of the Whole. I'd first like to move to suspend our rules and waive second reading on this item. Is there a motion to waive council rules, to suspend council rules, waiving second reading on ordinance 50-2024?
So moved, Madam President.
I have a first from Mr. Schnetzer.
Second.
A second from Mr. Renner. Any discussion on the motion to suspend rules? No discussion. Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Schnetzer,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Padova.
Yes.
Motion to suspend rules passes. Next, I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 50-2024 and to adopt this item. Is there a first?
So moved.
I have a first from Mr. Schnetzer. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Renner. Any discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. Ms. McGuire, would you please call the roll?
Schnetzer,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGregor,
Yes.
Padova.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Ordinance 50-2024 is adopted. Next section on the agenda, we have correspondence and actions. Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have anything from council office this evening?
No items.
All right, thank you. Council colleagues, any items from any of you this evening? All right, hearing none. Section L, representatives. First, we have on the agenda, Community Improvement Corporation, Mr. Renner or Mr. Weaver.
Happy to just say that CIC will be meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in the committee room.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weaver.
7:30, excuse me. Thank you for the reminder, Madam Mayor, because I would,
Yes, we have the special presentations with Expedient.
I will set the coffee timer a little earlier tomorrow morning, and I will be there.
All right,
It's questionable whether I'm going to be there tomorrow morning, so I
okay,
apologize.
Mr. Renner. All right, Mr. Weaver, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, thank you for attaching a report.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and my hat's off to the clerk's office, council office for their assistance as always in putting together the report. A few items I wanted to highlight for my colleagues' attention. Morpsey held its monthly commission meeting on Thursday, August 8th. The next meeting will be on September 12th. Moving further down in the report, in regards to funding opportunities, there are recycling and litter prevention grants available from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. Those awards range from $10,000 to $300,000 and can be used to initiate or expand recycling programs, encourage sustainability practices, stimulate economic growth, or support litter prevention efforts. As a quick aside, through my day job with the county, through the county auditor, we have used those grants to support our shred and e-shred events that have been a success, and I know the city has also put those events together to much success as well. Money Mondays, as folks know, Every Monday, sessions are an opportunity for members to learn more about key funding opportunities. Today's program highlighted the Community Development Block Program. Next week, OSU's Office of Academic Affairs Assistant Vice President for Institutional Research and Reporting, Jay Johnson. But there will be no Monday meeting on September 2nd. And then lastly, I know Clerk Van Meter has sent out some information on this, but the Summit on Sustainability will be held on Tuesday, October 29th at the Hilton downtown. Always a great event. So there's more information linked in my actual report. But if you haven't already, please circle back with Clerk Van Meter to hold your spot. And that is it for my MORPC report, Madam President.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Convention and Visitors Bureau, Councilwoman Padova.
Thank you. The midweek at the Creek will continue this Wednesday on the Front Plaza from 6 to 8 at Creekside. After that, the last two performances of the season are scheduled for August 28th and September 11th. The Spring and Summer Herbal Cocktail Trail is wrapping up at the end of this month, and a new Fall-Winter Passport will be released on September 1st, and a new branded prize will be offered for that as well. The CVB has distributed nearly 1,000 passports over the last 6 months, and multiple publications and social media influencers have been promoting that. So if you have not gotten yours, you still have a little bit of time left. Visit Gahanna is beginning to plan for the Holiday Lights celebration on Sunday, November 24th, so mark your calendars now. Vendor applications will be available at the beginning of September. And anyone who wishes to be on the planning committee for this event can contact Lori Kappas. Also coming up here this weekend is the Gahanna Area Arts Council's presentation of the Columbus Jazz Orchestra on August 24th at 7 p.m. And also the Gahanna Area Chamber of Commerce's Taste of Gahanna on Sunday, August 25th. So you can go to the Gahanna Area Arts Council's website or Gahanna Area Chamber of Commerce's website to purchase your tickets for those events. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Padova. Ms. Jones is unable to join us this evening. We wish her well in her continued recovery. I will just note that Gahanna Jefferson Schools started back last week. We hope all students are having a safe and happy start to their school year, along with staff and teachers. A reminder that the crosswalk at Havens Corners across from Community Congregational Church has been closed, and so students are encouraged to cross at the intersection of Hamilton and Havens Corners instead. And the first Gahanna Lincoln High School home game is this Friday. I can't believe it's football season already. So unless I'm reading the schedule wrong, I see it on the calendar for Friday versus Mason. So hopefully we'll see some colleagues and friends and neighbors out at the games coming up this season. Okay, with that, official reports. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, this is the first time we've been together since the Gahanna 175 events, so I think we were thrilled with the overwhelming success of that weekend that we had. It was truly heartwarming to see so many community members truly just come together to celebrate our shared history, the vibrant future that we are sharing together as well. The turnout exceeded our expectations throughout the entire weekend, from the Creekside Live special edition we had Friday night to the vintage baseball game Saturday to the event on Saturday night, picnic on Sunday. I think it was definitely a spirit of unity and of community pride that was just shining through that entire weekend. So I'd like to extend my thanks. We had 57 local nonprofit organizations and businesses that participated in that Saturday evening event, and would love to give a special thanks to the members of the Gahanna 175 Committee, our Gahanna Historical Society for their hard work, and our Parks and Recreation Department, specifically Brian Gill, Chelsea Heppert, and Tyler Wilson, all three of those organizations, the Gahanna 175, Historical Society, and our Parks and Recs folks, worked for over a year in really bringing that weekend from a vision to reality. So really appreciate their efforts. We're not done yet. This Saturday is Gahanna History Day at the Metropolitan Library Gahanna branch. That runs from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. With a slew of wonderful activities. I've heard that former Mayor McGregor will be giving food tours and history tours at some point throughout that day.
That's great.
But the also really cool thing is that an individual representative from the History and Genealogy Department will be on hand at the library where folks can bring old newspaper articles, old photos, et cetera, scan them in, and will become part of the actual archive. So we encourage our citizens to do that. I know there's a great Facebook page, Old Gahanna, that shares a ton of old photos. It'd be great to have those actually archived. Money Miler, this just yesterday was a fantastic event. I'm sure there are some people still getting the mud out of their ears, but I heard many people say that was their favorite event of the year. I know they changed the course up a little bit, and it was just fun to watch. Next year I might participate. I know Councilwoman Bowers did. I saw her there. So, well, I didn't see you there. I missed you there yesterday.
She was covered with mud.
Yeah, you could have walked right past me. I could have missed that. But always a great event as well. And then also last week, I attended the official ribbon cutting. I think, again, Councilwoman Padova was there as well, on the latest completed medical building at the Crescent and Central Park. It is the easternmost building. It was a new development project, houses 5 medical practices that are bringing a total of 80 jobs to our community. It's 47,000 square foot medical office building with an investment of about $24 million into our community. So we express our deep appreciation for those physicians, their staff, who not only are making that investment in our community, but offering high quality medical services to our residents. Congratulate Council on the passage of the SOPEC membership tonight. I appreciate your comments regarding the work of Directors Schultz and Weibensinger. It indeed was a lot of work for them to do. We had a timeline we committed to working in, and we met that timeline. The next step in the process, as you all know, but just for purposes of residents listening, will be the presentation of SOPEC's Operation and Governance Plan, which will be coming forward for adoption by Council. And also, as you've already seen with Director Schultz coming up to the microphone, there's a great deal of information that will need to be shared with residents. Opt in, opt out, what you can do, what you can't do, just understanding all of that. So we will be sharing information with residents, a great deal of that, over the next coming weeks and months. We encourage folks to keep an eye on the Facebook page for the city as well as the website. But we have a multitude of ways we'll be sharing information with the community. With school back in session, obviously our camps are closed. The Gahanna GSP is closed, but I wanted to say a special thank you to our 2024 seasonal employees. We had over 200 of them. Many were returning seasonals. Really strong leadership this year. They did a fantastic job. And as opposed to most recent past years where we were struggling to fill positions, we had the vast majority of positions filled by May 1st, which meant that our onboarding and our training were much more effective. We were able to improve that. And we were fully staffed in all areas, which also enabled us to hit our maximum capacities for programs. In the previous years, we've had to turn people away because we just did not have enough staff. Did not have to do that this year. So really appreciate the kids who come to work for the summer and really make it a great summer for our residents to enjoy our pools, our camps, and the activities. As a reminder, Hunters Ridge Pool is open on weekends through Labor Day. And then the doggy dip will be the following week, which I believe is September 8th. And then just finally, we all know that construction on the Hamilton Road Bridge has started. That is an ODOT project. ODOT is reconstructing that bridge as well as several others around the 270 Outer Belt. It is expected to be a year-long project. There are many complexities to the project, from work on the on-ramps, the exit ramps, under the bridge, on top of the bridge. We do appreciate everybody's patience as we go through this. It's going to be challenging at times for the course of the next year. As we receive information from ODOT about that project, we will push that out immediately to our residents. So again, keep an eye on social media, on Facebook, our website. We also encourage folks to sign up for alerts so they can get the latest and greatest on projects around the city. And that is all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Attorney Tamma Larison, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. Just briefly, to keep an eye out, the red line on the criminal code will be coming to you soon. and hopefully on the agenda for next committee.
Excellent. Thank you,
Thank
City
you.
Attorney Tim Larison. All right, we are down to council comment. Councilwoman Jones has submitted her constituent report, which has been appended to the minutes. With that, we'll turn to Mrs. McGregor.
Thanks. I wanted to also just reiterate about the Gahanna Day at the library. This is their, I think it's the library's 150th anniversary, and they have done this program in other communities, like I think it was Clintonville, Whitehall had a history day at the library. And besides the things the mayor brought up, there will be the five short videos that were on the storytelling evening in February, I think it was March? Maybe that Tim Corliss did. Those will be on loop, so you'll be able to see those. They're about 10 minutes each. They'll have artifacts. There'll be a panel discussion on Harry Bauer. There'll be the 2 walks around Old Gahanna. And I think Jim Schnell wrote a book. He's a professor at Ohio Dominican. He wrote a book on growing up in, it's not called Growing Up in Gahanna, but it is about him growing up in Gahanna. And so that'll be, things start at 11, and I think it goes till 4. So encourage everybody to look at those schedule and see if there's something of interest. The other thing is there's a lot of new drivers around. My daughter found an app called Life 360. You can put it on your kid's phone. It tracks the phone, so the kids are not without their phone. We had it over the weekend because they put it on one of our phones because we were watching some of the teenagers. And it gives you incredible detail. Like you can tell how many times they talk on their phone while they're driving. And you can tell like if they hard brake while they're driving. And so I even pulled it up when my daughter happened to be home, and I could see her walking around the side of her house. So for kids, if you've got kids and you want to keep kind of an eye on what they're doing, it tracks the phone. If they don't take their phone with them, you're out of luck. But you can see where the phone is located, and I was impressed with kids, you can tell them all you want, you can't be on your phone, but, and you're not in the car with them. But if you have this, and you can say, hey, I saw you were on the phone, 6 times while you were driving today, then that gives you a point of conversation. And it's so dangerous when they use the phones. And so if anybody has a use for that, I'd encourage you to get it. It's a free app and easy to install. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Mr. Renner?
Yes, thank you. My mind is a little blown about that Councilwoman McGregor about that app. What was the name of that app again?
I think it's called Life 360.
Life.
L-I-F-E.
Okay. So I do have a new driver. Caleb is, and he's driving all over the town. In fact, he's going to Newark campus for OSU. So he is going up and down 161. I want to thank my colleagues for their vote this evening. Thank you very, very much. I know there's some hesitancy, some reservations, but I'm very very much convinced that this is the right thing for our residents. And it's an energy choice. I don't want to get into the weeds a little bit, but there's some things coming up in the electrical market. PJM is our regional transmission operator that all the generators, all the companies report to, AEP, Duke, what have you. They publicly let their capacity in July. Those numbers came in 9 times higher. And so this is a very scary, very tricky thing. And we're already seeing a PJM is a regional, like I said, for 13 states, including the New England coast. Right now, New England is going through rates of 25% increase on their electrical bills, directly responsible to the PJM capacity publicly letting. So there's still time before it actually impacts us. If you remember, AEP's rates are set in for the end of May in 2025, but stay tuned. Now, on the renewable energy side, renewable energy is very clearly the most cost-effective option. There is, to the tune of 800 gigawatts of solar, battery, and wind power in the queue with PJM. They are already built, they're already wired, they're ready to connect to our transmission, to our net. PJM has refused at the moment for some reasons, but once that is actually provided on our net, you're going to see a serious market change, especially in the renewable energy sector. So stay tuned to that as well. I want to thank everybody that came tonight for the zoning. I think President Bowers, I think you summed it up very nicely. It's very nice to see such good concern and a dialogue with our residents, and we in turn are helping to actually understand the concerns, but also appreciate there is a process. Councilman Weaver, I think you did a very good job of that too, of reiterating what that process is. And so, but I think both sides, I just feel very privileged and very grateful to be part of a community that can actually discuss matters and then still be friends. So with that, I end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Ms. Padova.
I also want to send my thanks to the Parks and Rec Department and everyone, all the administration, everyone in the planning committees involved in the 175 celebration. It was a really fun weekend of just community gatherings. We did the music Friday night. My daughter even tried to do some of the line dancing. Loved the birthday cake. When we went back down to Creekside last week, she asked me where her birthday cake went, but she was very excited about all of the celebrations. And I was shocked when we were walking down there. I've said before that I can tell if it's a good night at Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival if people are parked on my street. And for the 175 celebration, people were parked all the way down Shoal Avenue whenever I left, and were almost to my road. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I was pretty impressed by that. Also, thank you to everybody that helped with the Muddy Miler yesterday. I am not a seasoned veteran like President Bowers, but it was a lot of fun. I definitely thought I would walk out of there less muddy. I was able to get out of bed this morning, so that was good, but it was a lot of fun. There were kids that were just jumping in the mud, and to just have that, to be able to be a kid again, right? And just jump in the mud and have no concern whatsoever for your safety. It's nice to see. So thank you for everybody that helps on that, and I will end it with that.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Padova. Councilman Weaver, excuse me. Weaver.
Okay.
You.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Madam President. I would just echo my colleagues' expressions of gratitude and thanks to everyone involved with the very, very successful Gahanna 175 celebration. I know a lot of staff time, a lot of volunteer time for sure. Definitely a labor of love that paid off and paid big dividends. It was tremendously successful. I had a blast all weekend long. That drone show was really cool. But at the other spectrum in terms of technology, I guess, the vintage baseball game was really cool as well. I can't say I'm an avid baseball fan, but even the rule changes were really neat and interesting to me, and I had a blast watching the Gahanna Bananas. Director Corey Corndog Weibensinger is still here this evening, so thank you for your participation. It was a really fun weekend, so thank you, everybody. really want to thank everybody who came out this evening and spoke, or even just attended for the rezoning application. These are difficult decisions with a lot of factors that need to be considered, and we do take those factors very seriously when we make our decision on how we're going to vote each way, and we rely upon obviously the applicant and their materials, but certainly rely upon our staff and the feedback from the community as we weigh those decisions. So it's greatly appreciated. I do look forward to the next steps for that in the process, and to echo what President Bauer said, I encourage the applicant to be proactive in their communication with their neighbors as they attempt to move forward. Lastly, I would encourage folks, if they are able and if they have the time, to sign up to be a poll worker this year. There's an anticipated, well, not only is there anticipated high need for poll workers, just because it is a presidential election year, but there's expected to be quite a drop-off as well. So encourage folks to sign up if they're able. I've probably served as a poll worker 6 or 7 times now. I love doing it. Grateful to my work for allowing me the flexibility to do that, but encourage folks if they're able to do that. And that is it for me, Ms. Bowers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. I do not want to repeat all the other thanks that my colleagues have already shared, so I won't, but know that I am deeply appreciative of everyone involved in all the great events that have happened and that are coming up. I wanted to specifically reference Hops and Vine, Gahanna Parks and Rec Foundation's annual fundraiser that's coming up on the 7th of September that has not yet been announced this evening. Wonderful event again down at Creekside, and so please put that on your calendar. Another event that's near and dear to the hearts of Parks and Rec Foundation is the Kyle Miller First Day 5K that takes place down at Creekside on the Sunday following on 9/8. A wonderful event to honor the memory of a Gahanna resident. So I would encourage you all to take a look at the Kyle Miller First Day 5K as well. And then just a quick reminder that the council office does maintain memberships and guest registrations for the Columbus Metropolitan Club forums. There are some really dynamic forums that are coming up that I think give us perspective and insight into what's going on regionally and to help us be better policymakers and better stewards of our community. There is a how journalism can save democracy coming up on the 21st, which I think speaks very directly to the need for transparency and resident communication to build trust in institutions. And then the following week is The Invisible Problem Everywhere, Confronting the Gender Data Gap, which can help us continue to advance and ensure equity between the genders in the work that we do. With that, I will adjourn this evening's meeting. Thank you.